pick up a new book. So this one is enabling teams to experiment. I would say more than experiment is like release strategies. Like experimenting is kind of like testing, but yeah, experimenting, because he covers A/B testing and Canary, but he covers like how to do blue green and those type of things. So we'll see how that works. Did anyone had opportunity to read it, this chapter? Just to know like who to bounce new things.
Very little this
Okay.
time,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
not a problem. So the book starts with like, yeah, that's what I said. Like maybe the title should have been like release strategies, but I didn't write the book, so it's not my book. But yeah, it's about release strategies and promoting. Like sometimes I call it promotion. Some people call it release. And then to sensitive environments. I think maybe this what means is production environments. Um, and then you will find like canary releases is one strategy, blue green releases is another strategy, A/B testing is another strategy. So that's putting software out. Um, I think those are the three basic ones that he goes about. The good thing, um, I like this first part of the chapter because he explains these things using Kubernetes like resources and doesn't go straight for like a tool or an ecosystem of like doing this thing. So um, this is in a few places where you see this. If you Google online, like search online and look for these strategies, you will find like you can use this open source project, or you can use this software tool, or this vendor, or this other thing. Like no, like there's not a lot of blog posts or content that explains like Kubernetes has building blocks natively on doing this, but also he said he also covers like some of the drawbacks that is not very um it has some trouble, or like I think he has user experience things of like it becomes difficult to manage like the state on this on Kubernetes. So that's why like he introduces, I think Knative is one tool, Argo Rollouts, and then he mentions service mesh like Istio and Linkerd to do some of that progressive releasing of a service. And these things are associated with, I guess, API or services, because you can have software in Kubernetes that is not an API. Like, for example, if you're in charge of running Kafka on Kubernetes, it's kind of like a stateful workload, right? Or if you are running in Kubernetes like some machine learning or batch processing using queue or batch in Kubernetes, that's it's not kind of an API that you have like end users driving. So the concept here in Kubernetes is broader, but I think for the purpose of the book, he's following the same um, theme of like the conference app, which has a front end, it's a web app that users log in. So that's why there's a user here. Um, so he explains the first pattern, which is canary release. That is the way of like you want to send a small amount of percentage of your users to the next version of your application, but not everyone. And that's to check if 5% is good, then switch over, or maybe start switching over after doing that. But just like you want to maybe do testing, and the canary terms, I think it comes here, explains like it comes from, it used to canary burst to alert when toxic gases reach dangerous levels. So that's type of testing that you would do. 5% would test functional testing, right? So if you have problems with scalability, or you introduce something that is performance regression or load testing, right? That you make a change that then you have a bug, introduce something bad around, you will not find it with 5%. You will find that problem when you actually like move the rest of the traffic, the 90%, to the new service, and then you hit the performance and those aspects. But this is more functional tests to see if the apps is working. And he explains how to do this in Kubernetes with deployments and service. So what it takes is to create um, a new deployment with the same labels of the service. So you have a mix of pods with like version 1 container, and then other pods with version 2 containers. And then you're the one that have to do kind of the math of like, if I want to send 5%, I want to be 5% to be handled by version 2, you need to know like the number of pods to create for each deployment. And he explains like that's the tricky part if you're going to do it with Kubernetes. And then the part of the service is the services selecting the pods because the pods have the labels. And I think, Sevi, you were in a Kubernetes book club meetup that I explained. I kind of like trick people on this, right? Because the concept is a lot of people think that the labels on the deployment are the ones that the service is watching. And actually, and then he has the picture here, he should have put it like template and then labels underneath, because the service doesn't know about deployments, it knows about pods. So he's just looking for pods that happen to have that label, and then taking the pods IP address. I say like that because it's kind of it's called an endpoint. So if you do Kubernetes get EP, that's my favorite command in Kubernetes for troubleshooting. Like somebody tells me that they have problems with
I learned that from you. Yeah,
I told them like run Kubernetes EP, and they will find like, oh, there's nothing in there like that. That's why you're not getting a traffic. And the thing is, if you do kubectl get all, EP is not part of it. I wish it was part of it. Anyway, random thing. But yeah, that's the idea. Service knows about pods, so you can create a pod with a deployment, with a job manually, and put a label on it, and it suddenly becomes part of the service. The reason I say this is because you can do canary testing without creating a deployment. If you want to have a container and you're doing debugging, maybe in dev or staging, you just need to create a pod, maybe with a tool like Scaffold or your or Teleport or whatever you're using for your locally Kubernetes programming that you're doing. You can create that pod, happens to be the same label, and then traffic will land in that pod from the service because it matches the label. And then he mentions here the Istio and then Linkerd, which has more advanced and fine grain of like inspecting the traffic and then making decision on rules to see like, where do I send this traffic to which pod or service that you have, including things like user agent. That's the typical one that will look at the user agent or header and then send the traffic over. And then this yeah, I think if I keep talking, we're running out of time. Blue-green deployments is around having the service like duplicated sometimes. Yeah. So you have 2 copies of your workload, and it's sometimes called staging. You have a staging environment. You deploy your software through staging. And that has a deployment, and this explains like very small scale of like, if you have things in the same namespace with 2 deployments, sometimes people divide it into clusters. They have these environments in 2 clusters, so they will have the blue in one cluster and green in another one, if they're doing upgrades even to the cluster. But it's a full service of like for internal testing. Sometimes companies do that. Like you will have I used to work in a place where I had access to the new version of the service that was going to come out to all the users around the world. So our URL had, I think it has test in the DNS, and I only had access to it, and then end users had the other one. So eventually went to that one. So that's why he said like internal testing. So that's blue-green. And then in terms of capacity, usually it's the same number. It's a duplicate deployment with the same number of replicas and everything. And you can see here that they have two services, blue and green. And then maybe you can access the green through a different ingress or something like that. And then the other on the internal ingress or internal load balancer inside your cloud provider or internally. The next one is A/B testing. So this one is sending. I think he also talked about the problem of like, that's the web page later. A/B testing looks like blue-green, but this is like sending information to both, and then for the purpose of like doing testing. Sometimes A/B testing is usually I usually really associated to like front end or UI applications to do A/B testing to see which one has more retention, or you can measure the usability, or like how much people stay in your web page versus the other one. A lot of companies do that. They measure how much time you're spending or browsing over one version or another one. So they're doing like A/B testing and changing that. Sometimes that could be also done with what we talked in last chapter, open feature. He also talks about in A/B testing that you will need to have like some type of router to know like how do you decide which users to send to which service. And this is something that if you implement it with Service Mesh, Service Mesh has like capabilities to easily implement that in network wise. And then he talks about the like the complexities to do this only with Kubernetes. If you want to do Kubernetes, it's like he points out, if you want to do the canary, you need to calculate the number of replicas to put in one versus the other. And also if you want to do in steps, if you want to go canary and also release, then you need to start like increasing the number of replicas in one side and decreasing in another one, and then maybe wait a day, or maybe wait an hour, or wait 5 minutes, and then do another step. So it's called a step. And you will see that in Argo Rollouts, it's called a step. And imagine yourself that you're doing that dynamic changes in GitOps, where the desired state, he mentions here GitOps, even if you use GitOps, because a lot of people are like, oh, use GitOps, everything is solved. Well, it's complex because it's a dynamic thing that is happening, right? You're rolling out from one service to another. So it's kind of like, it's CD, but it's like kind of like dynamic CD. So if you have the definition of the service in Git as a desired, you'll be like changing Git to trigger Argo or Flux for the desired state. So some machine or some software would be changing a number of replicas, for example, in Git, and then that gets started. People do it. I'm not saying that people don't do it, but that's something that you need to like do an imperative task of like doing the changes, making sure everything's fine, maybe checking Prometheus or your metrics, maybe waiting and then going to the next one, or maybe sometimes just waiting with a pull request for manual promotion. Like maybe you need to wait until Tuesday, or you need to wait for Sevi, is the boss, right? That she's the one that decides to merge that PR and feels like empowered because it doesn't trust GitOps fully.
Yeah, I want a button. I want ServiceNow request and all.
Yes. So I had many end users asking for that manual merge. And then when it's just a story, like usually tell stories, like Eric knows that we tell stories. And then when we give them the solution, and it's like a pull request, and it's waiting for them to merge it like with the button. And they say like, what do I do with this? Or what you wanted a button, that's the button. Like, well, how do I make sure that if I push the button, everything will be okay? Well, you did ask for the button. You didn't ask like for a test report inside in a comment in the PR saying like everything checks, right? Everything, all green checkbox. So then What said Eric? Carlos and I also, we are full of stories. Yes. And then so we added that, and we added like all the checks, right? Everything that what at that time is coming up, links to check into Grafana to make sure this up, to the point that the person got tired of like, I'm wasting my time just like checking that the boxes are green to read, to push the button, like let's can this stop, like can this thing just checks, and if everything's okay, do the decision, and I don't have to do it like multiple times a week. So that we went ahead and implemented auto promotions. But everything was logged. Everything was logged. We in a Jira type of system, like ticketing, change management, so everybody knew that the software that was there was like past all the testing. There was change management. There was a ticket, but everything was automated. Anyway, that was a story of like back in the days when we did DevOps before platform engineering. Like soon, like nobody will know like what DevOps is. Like we used to do platform engineering. That's it for the first part? Any comments, questions before we jump? I think the next section is Knative. Chat had a comment. Do we do waves in Argo? Sync waves. Sync waves. Can you tell chat what in sync waves releasing software? Canary?
Yeah, actually, I think I linked to the wrong document and docs there, but I was wondering if this was a common thing. We have different regions that we deploy to, and we create waves. Perhaps it's more of like a. Well, I don't know. I just wanted to ask if that was common to deploy to certain environments in waves like that.
Yeah, waves is a way. Yeah, in Argo CD, sync waves is to control within one Argo app. That's the caveat. Within one Argo app, if it's deploying a bunch of YAMLs, is to have ordering between those YAMLs. And sometimes it's done through like CRDs. Argo has like good concepts of like an order, but sometimes you need to like override that order. But it has an internal way of doing that. In terms of promoting regions and software, I usually go more with application. A lot of people use application sets, and they have a concept of progressive sync. So you can let's go let me see if I can show it here. Progressive. I don't. If people don't mind, I can show a little bit of Argo here. So it's called progressive sync or running sync. Progressive sync. And then it's something like this. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So in Argo, I'm a fan of Argo application sets. I have a project called the GitOps Bridge. It's all about application sets. So this one is maybe not applicable to regions and like deploying like cloud services in the region. That becomes a little bit more complex, but maybe something smaller. What Argo has here is it has this rolling sync, and basically says, deploy me an Argo app. These are application sets deploy Argo apps. So you can say deploy in dev first. And if everything passes, then start doing QA. And only then, if all the Argo apps are healthy, and Argo apps can have a healthy concept, that you can write Lua script and then put whatever is your term healthy is, right? If it's like the number of replicas or like whatever you want to inspect in a CR or or about the spec. But if they're healthy, then QA. And then you can do it in percentages, right? And steps, like do it 10% at a time if you're doing a lot of Argo apps in that. And then, yeah, max update support modes. Match update together. Default is 100. Like do that all together, or like do enough Argo apps in these sync waves. And also, if they pass, then start the next one and doing like these steps. So it feels like Argo rollouts embedded in here. if that makes sense. So this is like a way of orchestrating the apps, ordering kind of thing versus the ordering within one app. But it depends what you define inside the app. But you can have both, right? Inside the app, you still need like ordering. Does that make sense? So that's what we have in terms of rolling out things in Argo. CD rollout is more. I think rollout is more advanced because rollout has the capability of like getting information externally, like from Grafana or Prometheus or OpenTelemetry or like something external, meaning like there's no 500 errors or 400 errors from the web server. Continue to the next step, right? Increment by 5%, and it keeps integrating my metrics. That's usually how I did it when I work in a cloud service. I did it with watching the metrics as something external, watching the metrics. I didn't promote, and I stopped the promotion.
Yeah, we do something similar. Sorry to take you on that tangent, but I thought it was relevant.
Yeah. Sync waves is also another strategy on ordering things. Where's the book? Yeah, and chat works for a cloud service. Like it's a little bit more complex than just like Kubernetes and namespace. It's regions, right? And it's around the world, and it's data centers, and different versions of your service. So it's a little bit more complex. So the next section is Knative. It's a open source project. I was involved with the foundation of this project between different companies, and that was in 2008, I think it was. No, 18. Sorry, it's 10 years. 2018, I think it was when I was introduced. We started working on this. So Knative, I think he and Mauricio also was I was in steering committee, and he was added as a end user steering committee representing Dapper into Knative, into a Knative project. When I was in steering, so he has background of all the capabilities. So I think he went not overboard, but he went and put a lot of information about Knative on the internals and how it works. But if you're using it, it's a good chapter for understanding Knative. And if you want another book on Knative, I forgot his name. He's on steering committee now. He released a book. I'll put it in the notes. End of last year, I reviewed the book and gave some review comments. Really in depth. Evan. So Evan, yeah, forgot his name. He did a book recently. So yeah, Knative. The reason that I think there's some noise in here.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I on accident. Yeah, unmuted.
Oh, go ahead, Sabi.
I have a room full of 10-year-olds in the back. Just need to.
I think that's more fun than
tell them to stop
boring old folks talking about YAML. So yeah, Knative. The reason that he brings it up is because Knative was an attempt to create kind of like the Kubernetes service v2, to create an abstraction of a service. A service in Kubernetes today only has the concept of like sending traffic to a deployment. So in Knative, we wanted to create a CR in Kubernetes that a service is more than just this traffic, and we name it service to be confused with the other service, but everything's a service. And this service incorporates both the service about what service does, plus the definition of a revision deployment, plus traffic splitting, giving percentages of like sending information to both in one simple CR. So that's the reason I think he added this into this chapter. So for example, here's, I think he takes the notification service as an example. So this is the definition of what you will do. You put kind service. Then you have a kind of a pod template. So this looks like a deployment, but it's not. and then you put spec, and then containers, and then this is your container. This is the container that you're going to deploy. So you don't need a service.yaml, you don't need a deployment.yaml, you don't need the whole thing about deployment.yaml. This is the minimum information. You deploy this, and then this basically behind the scenes, we create you a service, a deployment, and everything behind the scenes, all the Kubernetes objects. It will give you the URL here as a status, and then that's the URL that you hit. It's very centric in terms of like DNS to hit the service, and then you get back the information of the notifications. He highlights some of the features that I mentioned is very like you create a service, and the default way is that you get a public URL that you can quickly hit. So it all handles the ingress and the service, and if you have Istio, it also handles that. Manage the Kubernetes service, meaning like it creates the deployment and anything behind it. Collects service usage, so it has like a site proxy. You can say it's kind of a service mesh, but it has a site proxy that all the traffic goes through that, and then it can know how much traffic is going to a service versus another one, and that's how it knows the percentages of like how much traffic is going through these pods. And then the last one, which a lot of people associate with Knative Serving, which I think is like a minor thing, is like scaling to 0. So if the queue proxy detects that there's no more traffic, it would shut itself down. And if there's more, if like there's 0 pods running, there's a pod running called the activator. And if there's another traffic coming in, then that traffic is frozen in Linux. And then the pod gets started. So the pods should start very, very quickly, because you don't want your users like to wait a long time. When the pod comes up, then the request, the HTTP request in Linux gets unfrozen, and then it gets sent to the pod. I think, yeah, I explained that there's a feature called freezing versus not freezing. I think this one is just holding, but it's kind of the similar thing. So that's the explanation, high level, of like what is a service. And then inside that same YAML, you will put, there's a section called traffic, as you can see here, and then you can say percentage. So as you can see, you don't do that in a separate place on anything. You put a percentage here in that YAML service, and this one is the default 100% to the latest version, and that's how you do so percentages like Canary or A/B testing. In this one, you can see at the bottom it says you're splitting the versions 50-50%. And then as you hit the HTTP URL, it will go one or the other based on these percentages of traffic. And you can see a picture here. I think this one. Oh, so he explains a little bit of the problem. Is like these things are like not. They were intended maybe for API requests, not UI website requests. So he points out like if you have a version, if you're looking at a version of the website, and usually websites, I put them in static content like S3, but let's say that you're rendering that server-side rendering and sending that information back from the front end. If you hit, maybe you hit the browser hits your service, one version, and the next one, it needs maybe another JavaScript file, it may hit the newer version that is not compatible. So you get like problems in the UI. So you need to kind of like implement like sticky session, like if you're old enough, like you know what sticky sessions are, like sessions in Java and like all those things. So in Knative, since time microservices, that's not available, but it has ways of like tagging. So you can do header-based tagging, or just like tag-based, like A/B testing with tag-based routing or header routing. So he explains the both ways of doing it. So at the bottom, you can say the latest version has a tag called version 110. So you can like from the browser hit version 110 if you have this tag. If not, 100% of the people go maybe to the old version, and that's a way of like doing maybe canary testing. If you want to do canary testing, then you can have a tag, and then that tag you define it in the YAML. So in this case, you can see here the front end revision name is version 110. It has 0% traffic by default, so meaning that you have to be explicit and hit this tag to hit it. If not, then 100% will go to the latest revision. So this is the latest revision. The latest revision is here. I think it's opposite. I'll double check with him. I think I saw a problem with this. Like some numbers are opposite of what he was saying. So yeah, he shows here like showing the tag version. So one is version 100 and the other version is 110. So with the tag based traffic, you will hit it, and then your UI will be consistent. You can also use header based routing. So you can switch it to header by changing the configuration of I think you have to enable this feature. I think this feature is not enabled by default. So that's why he does a kubectl patch a config map to enable it to do header based routing. So I think this is where you can have the version in the header. Okay, so this is how you implement the tagging with the header. I got confused. Now your UI can have this header specifying the tag, and then it will go to that version. I think he's playing he's playing first the terms of tagging, and now he is playing the header, how to use the tag. Let me see what else. And then also blue-green, you can do blue-green deployments in Knative. You can update the version, and then suddenly becomes the latest version automatically, or like I said, this is the traffic section in the YAML that you can like have all type of configurations. So you can tag one is green, where you put 0% of the traffic goes to the green, but it's defined as a revision and it has a tag. And then the routing says like go everything to blue. And then when you want to switch from one to another, you basically set 1% to 0 and the other one to blue. So this is kind of like more of a swapping aspect of it. If you are not using, I think he says that for this example, he's setting the replica hard-coded to 1, so it never scales to 0. But if you have something like in practice, some of the heavy end users of Knative, in practice, if you have like scale to 0 and you swap very quickly to 100%, so let's say that this one has this kind of is the blue has 100%, and you have like, I don't know what typically people has in their production environments, like 10,000 pods, just to give a number, right? And you have a bunch of nodes and you have 10,000 pods. Everybody's hitting that. The minute that you switch over to the other one, you're scaling from 0 to 10,000. So if you're hosting like a big popular website that everybody uses for like critical things, then you will start seeing some errors, right? Like some people will work until like the nodes come up, and then you use something like auto scaling nodes. So that's the reason you may the scale to 0 is sometimes not practical, but there's a feature in, I don't know if it's enabled like I think it's enabled behind a beta flag or something. That's what I remember. That you can enable it, and it would do it in a smart way of like start switching in steps and rolling out in time. So it would like, you can tell it like swap to 100%, but take 1 hour, or slowly move to 100% and take 1 hour. So it will do the rollout progressively over the next hour. It will get to 100%, or like you put 2 hours or 3 hours or half a day, you progressively like start like coming up on the number of requests going to the new version, and the pods will come up and the nodes will come up. until you reach the 100%. So it's not a quick swap. So that was a problem that a lot of people hit when they were using this at scale. So I think there's an experimental flag, I believe, that you can enable, and then it will do it over a period of time. Questions? Does that make sense? Also, some people, and not related to Knative, but to Blue Green, is some people have so large deployment that they cannot have a Blue Green. Like they don't have capacity, or they don't have the money to run 2 copies of the app. Like they don't have enough like funding to run like 10,000 pods on one cluster, one version, and then 10,000 pods again. That may be a lot, like too much money to run in parallel. So it's not feasible to do that. So that's why a lot of people do strategies to progressive rollout. And talking about rollouts, this is I saw some Slack. Oh, Eric's leaving. Oh, yeah. Thank you for joining, Eric. Have a good weekend. Argo Rollouts is it's really strategies. I would say maybe, yeah. It doesn't have to be GitOps, because you can apply the YAMLs. I've seen a lot of end users just using Argo Rollouts, and sometimes they don't apply that YAML with GitOps, but some people do pair both Argo Rollouts with Argo CD. But you can use it you can use Argo Rollouts without Argo CD. You don't need it. You don't have to have both. So Argo Rollouts is an open source project out of the Argo projects in CNCF. And it supports out of the box some of the strategies. So in this case, you can see that in Argo Rollouts, they have a YAML file called rollouts, and it's a CR that you basically put this is a strategy called Canary, and it will do these steps progressively. And I think Mauricio goes over the steps of what it's doing. So in this case, it has 3 replicas. It has the version that you're trying to roll out, and then it's like how many instances do you need? Set the weight. It will pause. You can put a time. I think maybe duration. I don't know what's the default, but he has another example here that it pauses 10 seconds. Or maybe pause without it is like the promotion. I think pause without seconds is waiting for a human to promote, like not a human, but you have to configure a command to promote. So I think he has the command at the bottom, and then continue, set 75, pause 10 seconds, and eventually we'll get to 100%. I think that he goes, see here, the YAML is applied with kubectl. If you do get rollouts, you can see the status, and then it has a UI that you can see. And I think from here you can have the button called promote, but you can do also the promote in the CLI, where when actually like it does that pause, and then it shows like it's doing the strategy Canary. And this is like, it says 100 because it got to that revision to 100%. So this is what it does. Rollouts creates 2 replica sets. So there will not be any deployments, Kubernetes deployments. So if you do kubectl get deploy, you get 0. There's nothing. So rollouts is kind of like your double deployment, that thing that we saw at the beginning of the chapter, that where you're doing by hand, creating 2 deployments with the same label. This is what rollout is doing. Like it's orchestrating the replica set, and then the number of replicas to have on the number of pods to have on each replica based on the percentage of the total pods between the 2. So it's doing that math that we were talking about at the beginning for it. So yeah, so this is like he's testing the service, and this is a good picture. I don't know if I've seen the picture this good in the Argo. Maybe I've seen it in all the places where I was. This picture, And you can see here that you can do kubectl Argo Rollouts get. So Argo Rollouts, I don't have a lot of experience. So if somebody has more experience than me with Argo Rollouts, go ahead and speak and help. Gustavo says, I know Argo Rollouts can target deployments. Try that. Anyone knows why should I run away from this? I didn't know that it's like targeted deployments. I always assumed that it was.
Yeah,
I didn't have to
the
use deployments.
rollouts CRD is the standard one, but I know it can target deployments, not as the default. You need to set that it is targeting the deployments, and then that you need to set the deployment replicas to 1. Otherwise, because same thing as HPAs, I guess. Otherwise, it's going to make things a little bit weird. But I know that people tend not to use the deployment manifest and instead go with changing everything to rollouts. So I'm wondering if there is a catch to actually try to point to existing deployments.
No, I don't know, but I think rollouts don't do anything with deployments. You have to take your spec from your if you're migrating from like deployments to start using rollout, that's a migration. You either use deployments or use rollouts, and rollouts is the one that has the pod template spec in there. So and then it will orchestrate the replica sets. That's basically what I know about it. But of targeting deployments, maybe that might be a feature that I don't know about. I don't know. So yeah, this explains a little bit of the Argo rollouts. He in the book, I think it's like maybe 5%. Also with Knative, like for the two projects are like huge. Like the amount of features that I think he did a good job summarizing release strategies for these two large projects. Like Knative has like ton of more features and corner cases and how to do it. And in the repo, he has examples how to deploy it also, so you can like practice in kind. And then rollouts has a lot of features, like I was saying before, in terms of like I'm very interested into like deciding and notifications, right? Getting metrics in, and then taking this sorry, seeing the health of like the rollout. But in this case, I think it's just going by like Kubernetes. Like if the pods are fine and the pods are ready, that's enough of indication that stuff is working, right? So you have your liveness probes. Gustavo, you put something in here. You figure out how the deployment.
Yeah, it's just to not need to rewrite the pod template onto the rollouts. You can reference a pod template.
You can do a rollout ref and point
yes.
to a deployment. I see.
It would still be the rollout, the one that doing all the replica set management, but you would make the transition a little bit easier,
it's like it's a way to copy or get the template section, right? Instead of you copying it. Actually, this is enlightening for me. I always assume that you have to like change all the YAMLs, because usually people have deployments like, and then you have to like delete all 5,000 deployment.yamls that you have in your repos and then switch into rollout.yaml. So I think this is this is smart. Maybe it was there all the time. Maybe I didn't know about it. So yeah, I think this is worth the hour today in the book club. I learned something new. Thank you, Gustavo, for joining and contributing.
You're welcome.
And then maybe that's a good reason. Like, I don't know. For me, I would say this should be the default way it should be documented or getting started, or a book, right? Because I think that's the first thing that people would think. And that's was the first thing that I was thinking, like, oh my God, if I have to change the way I do things with deployments, or the team does things with the deployment, I have to tell them, hey, I have a new tool called Argo Rollouts, but by the way, you have to change all your deployments. Like, they will kill me, right? So I think could be that. I'm in the Argo project, so I would read the documentation again and maybe open an issue of like seeing if the user experience or the getting started experience, this is like more highlighted, or maybe the first user experience on it, or what are the drawbacks of doing a workload ref versus like injecting a template inside. Good discussion. So yeah, so this is so if you either you put the template spec, or like Gustavo said in the chat, you put the reference to your deployment, and then rollouts will do those steps that you saw. And then here you can see like the 2 replica sets. If you do get RS, it's not a lot of magic. And then that's one of the things I think the book club does in here, kind of try to explain or learn about Kubernetes, that you always know how to fish. There's all these tools that you use on top of Kubernetes. There's no magic to it. You can still get to like the real resources in Kubernetes and figure out why something is not working or debug it. So at the end of the day, if something's not working, get RS, get the replicas, and check what's going on. And then this is the command when it does the pause without duration. Then you need to do Argo Rollouts promote, which eventually will change a resource in Kubernetes. Again, this is just a CLI, but it's not magic. It's like helping you do a patch. So if you do kubectl Argo Rollouts -v6 or higher, you should see the HTTP request coming out from the kubectl to what the patch is doing, and you can see like where's the magic thing that you have to do if you have to do it with Jenkins or something else. So yeah, it explains here that it does 25%. It waits for a promotion and then continues to 75%, waits 10 seconds, and eventually gets to 100. So it's just showing here how it looks from the CLI and the UI, and then you can see like the old one went to 0, the new one went to 3, because 3 replicas is what you want to deploy. And the reason about having steps is practical. From what I said before, is sometimes you have so much large deployments or pods get some time to come up, because maybe you're using something like Cluster Autoscaler or Carpenter, that you're requesting a new node to come online. So it takes a little bit of time to configure the worker node, the Linux VM to get created, the pod to get started, for the container image to get downloaded. And some people have machine learning images that are like 20 gigs and 2 gigs. So it takes a while to download that gigantic model. And then eventually the pod will be up. So that's why little by little doing releases is safe for testing, but also like the way you get resources and you don't get errors. So that's the reason that it's good to have progressive scaling and rollouts together. And then this one is blue-green, which is a different strategy. I think the YAML, I don't know if it shows the YAML for blue-green. It should say strategy blue-green. And then it has like the pointers to the 2 services. So it will not do it with steps, I guess. It would just swap over for blue-green. And then the same thing over. You can see the information from the UI, from the CLI, and then do the get. This is same information. I think it's I saw it in the Git repo in the README. And it's here like the blue-green with 2 replicas, and then changing the pointers of the service. So you're swapping kind of that thing that we saw at the beginning. That's why I think this is why I like that he explained at the beginning how you would do things in Kubernetes with service and labels and 2 deployments, because then these tools are actually doing the same under the cover, so it's easier to understand. So it's doing exactly the same service with the labels blue, service with the label green, and then your pods will have the labels that match, and then traffic will go through ingress to find the endpoints. And I think the other one, I don't think I got this far reading here, but it talks about analysis. Okay, so this is the piece I wanted to learn, but I didn't get that far. But this is the analysis template and analysis run, which is like you can run, and here he's showing Prometheus, like a metric in Prometheus to fetch some information. It could be like a P90 or NSLO. And based on that, it will make a decision to continue the rollout or not. So this is I think the powerful thing about rollout is these metrics analysis and runs to make a decision based on how the app is behaving, which is metrics. So in here, you can see the Prometheus address, the Prometheus metric that you will put, and then the success condition. If it's like above 95% or like lower than 94%, if you're looking for errors, don't promote or continue. I think I got this far. I didn't read this piece, but yeah, you can read it on your own. And this is the analysis part. And then rolling everything out back to platform engineering, which is the DevOps, the platform engineering is the one in charge of like rolling. Sometimes, most of the time, is in charge of rolling out your software. If you're a developer, and the developer kind of concentrates on dev environments, lower environments, writing the code, testing, unit testing, integration tests, and then to get it to production, like Chad said, over regions, over clusters, the platform team would abstract that from you, and it's just CI/CD, depending on the tool that they use. In this case, he picked two that are out there. Didn't explain service mesh, which I think is okay. Service mesh is something also that people use a lot to do this type of like rolling out percentages of the traffic network-wise. But you have to have your services and your deployments configured, regardless if you use Istio service mesh. You have to configure the versioning, and that doesn't solve that problem. It just solves the networking routing, but not the number of replicas or creating pods and things like that. I think that's it. We're a little bit over time. Anyone has something to add? Good, bad? Did you learn something new today by attending? You can put it in chat, or you can say it. Chat, learn something new. What did you learn, chat?
I learned about A/B testing. I've never done a lot of A/B testing before, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I learned about the work deployment reference. Claudio brought it.
Huh.
Sevi says, I learned that I need to learn about Argo rollouts. Again, like, don't get married with tooling, right? Because the next job may have a different tool, but there's if you watch GitOps Con, NA, and KubeCon talks, there's a few good YouTube talks. Person from Code Fresh is a maintainer, and I really like his talks on Argo rollouts. And also, if I have problems with it, I'll be a person to ask for help. And Francisco said Knative achieved to run the demo and repo, and it works. Okay, so you tried Knative.
Yeah, I've tried at the same time you were explaining things, and it works, and it's nice how to see the traffic is. Well, I tried the first strategy, which is basically the canary one, but at the beginning he set up a 50-50, so it's very nice to see how the traffic is balanced between the two versions. So it's pretty cool.
And you did it in kind?
In kind, in my laptop, yeah.
I work a lot on improving the user experience for Knative to make it work on kind, make it work without Istio, make it work out of the box the first time, make it work with your computer localhost with a fake domain name in kind. So, because it was super difficult, a lot of people had negative feedback because it was very difficult to get started or try something. So glad that actually proves that we improved the UX. And then Gustavo said,